ATB Music Podcast.
Sing along, get away with it.
Oh, we've actually started.
Yeah.
Oh.
The end. Thank you. Join us again next time.
Hey.
What you missed? What you missed in that
good,
podcast was you missed us talking about the new Depeche Mode album, the new Ed Sheeran album, Stormzy. Yes, that was a good one. A new Marling album, album by Alison Krauss, and the latest one, Ryan Adams. So anyway, next time. Oh no, hang on. Running order's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Depeche Mode.
All right, are we going straight in?
Yeah, let's go straight for it.
We're doing this cold. Depeche Mode, Spirit.
Are they going backwards, Pete?
Now, I must confess, as a super fan of Depeche Mode, I've only listened to this a couple of times.
Ooh.
I know. What can I say? I read a quote, and I think it was a quote that you forwarded me, something along the lines of "This is their best album since." And
It isn't.
And I think that the spoilers. And I think the quote was "Songs of Faith and Devotion." I can kind of see where that quote was going because I think this is probably their most rock/gospel infused album since then. But in terms of their best since, nah, this is not their best since. I still don't know where I am with this one. I really want to like it because, as I aforementioned, super fan. But in terms of where it sits and where the tracks sit and how it feels as an album, I'm still finding my way. I'm struggling with this one, if I'm honest. It's really hard reviewing this particular record because you kind of know where it's going to go, and I could come back to you in a month or two and say, actually, yeah, best album of the year so far. Just took me a few more listens to really get into it. But then actually you think, well, I kind of hope for more by now. If that makes sense.
Yes, sorry.
Is that child again?
It's the.
Well, we should get her to run in here and while you're doing your interview.
It's the background star that has been mentioned to me by at least one listener.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like the bloke on the BBC, get her to run in. Like, oh,
yeah.
Hello, Danny.
Yeah, I think the bloke on the BBC's children were slightly better behaved than mine.
Oh, bless her. So that's all the negative. Positive for me, there are a couple of tracks in here that I really, really sort of I found myself going into, but I'm going to go negative again all of a sudden. I'm just going to highlight Scum and Cover Me as my initial sort of feelings with regards to this particular record. Oh dear.
Yeah.
It's angst-ridden, this podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of angst-ridden week we've had, actually.
Really?
Insight into the personal life of one of the podcasts. It's all sweetness and light without the sweetness.
We had one of those a couple of weeks ago. It'll pass, I'm sure. Anyway, so to be honest with you, those are probably my stronger tracks. Going backwards, actually, I quite like. And the other thing I would say about this record is it's probably, their most political record.
Yeah.
For about 30 odd years.
Yeah.
Certainly since, the likes of Construction Time Again, which was an angst-ridden record. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to pause? I'm suggesting we leave all this in.
Yeah. Let's pause this for 1 second.
Just pause.
God, it was smooth. It's just like...
It's seamless.
Yeah, it's almost like there hasn't been a 15-minute gap in between that. Whilst chaos ensues in my household. So we were talking about Depeche Mode. And you were talking about politics.
Yeah, I was just thinking, into the tracks like Going Backwards and obviously Where's the Revolution, the lead single. And it was a theme that came back later on as well. in the second half of the album. It felt this is very much the post-Brexit, post-Trump zeitgeist that they've jumped on, and not jumped on, because this album's probably been in the making now for about a year or so, but they've certainly picked up that angst that seems to be in our politics at the moment, and if one forgets, I guess, that their albums are probably known more for their sexual politics rather than their actual politics.
I suppose so, yeah.
But they've actually gone back to some of the real sort of politicking in the lyrics of this album, which I thought was interesting. I thought it was an interesting take, actually, and clearly they're finally growing up.
Yeah,
I think Kids does that to you.
Yeah. Yes, it's an interesting record. I mean, it kind of starts off strong with, as you're talking about, going backwards of West Revolution and the Worst Crime, which I think is the song that's been growing on me, perhaps the most, the opening 3 tracks.
Yeah.
And I have to confess, from then on, the album kind of struggles to really gain traction for me, and I think partly because of the pacing. I think the next, if you take Scum out of it, the next kind of like 4 tracks are all very much kind of one-paced. And if you listen to them individually, they work fine, but as an album, I don't think it gels that well.
Yeah.
Until you, and also what I think is missing is, whilst obviously Martin Gore's melancholy is still there, I think what's missing actually is more of the killer pop choruses that makes the earlier albums that have been referenced in several reviews great. I think the closest you get to that is on So Much Love. But when people are comparing it to So Much Love, Devotion and Violator and stuff like that, yeah. But you think about Violator, you got Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, Policy of Truth.
That's comparison too far,
clean and stuff like that. You just the melodies and the singableness of those tracks in itself. There's not really much of that jumping out of this record for me. Interesting that obviously Martin decides to sing 2 songs.
Yes.
I'm presuming that's penance for allowing Dave Gahan to contribute 4 tracks.
Oh, is it?
Co-written mostly with the other 2 members of the band that aren't really members of the band.
Yeah.
Except for touring.
Yeah, I know the touring 2. I think he has sung a couple on the last couple of albums. What I think is different this time is their sort of where they're positioned on the album. And perhaps it comes back to your point around sequencing. Is that the last track is one of them?
Yes.
And for me, that just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
That he got the closer. I don't know, unless they're trying to tell us something here,
Who knows? We're probably the wrong people to ask about this.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, hope this isn't the final album,
the final cut.
But so it's interesting. As I say, come back in a month or 2. I will listen to this a hell of a lot more because obviously I will. But right now, I'm a bit lost. Not feeling the spirit.
I would probably concur at the moment, but still I'll probably listen to it a bit more.
Yeah.
Right, next up is a man who probably doesn't really need our review, one way or the other, to be perfectly honest. Ed Sheeran with his 3rd album, Divide, who is selling records like the bucket load, frankly. I think he's going to be the equivalent of Taylor Swift and Adele over the past 4 years as the person that's going to end up shifting the most records this year by the looks of things.
Mm-hmm.
Even at this stage of the year.
Even now.
I'm tempted to review this album simply by referring to a conversation this morning that I had with said child who was screaming in background. And apparently yesterday they had been asked in class by the teacher who their favourite artist band was, the children, and by far the biggest response was Ed Sheeran.
Oh, really?
This is a group of 6 and 7-year-olds.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. So I could stop just there and say, and on to the next album. However, that is being unfair, both to Ed and the record. What to say about this? First of all, the positive. I'll do the positive.
Do the positives. I was too negative last time. Go on.
It's not a bad record. However, it is a bit kind of, he does his rap thing, he does his pseudo Coldplay thing, he does this kind of Pharrell pop thing, his wannabe Van Morrison thing. But the problem I have...
Is that the Bewitched thing?
No. although Philip, I was going to mention Bewitched, strangely enough.
Go on.
Too many songs for me are delivered in that same kind of what I call the Ed style. That whole kind of singing rap meter kind of thing with the plucky, slappy guitar line and modern drum beat, which is fine, the odd track to, but does get a bit tiring for me personally. Since you've brought up the Bewitched word, let's deal with that straight away.
Deal with that one.
Yeah, there is a track on the album called Galway Girl. And to be fair to the chap, he does have family from that part of Ireland. Sadly for fans of Steve Earle, this is not a cover of Steve Earle's infinitely better track of the same title. But I do. This is one of the times where I'm going to read a quote from the artist because it amused me greatly about the track. He said, "They, Warner Music, were really, really against Galway Girl because apparently folk music isn't cool. But there are 400 million people in the world that say they're Irish, even if they're not Irish. You meet them in America all the time. I'm a quarter Irish and I'm from Donegal. Yeah. And those type of people are going to fucking love it. My argument is always, well, the Course sold 20 million records. The label will say, oh, the Course, that was years ago. But who's tried since the Course? There's a huge gap in the market, and I promise you in 2 years' time there'll be a big folk band that comes up that'll pop. And what happen as a result of labels being like, oh shit, if he can put a fiddle and an Uilleann pipe on it, we might as well try it as well. Yeah.
Thanks for doing that to us, Ed.
Yeah. The problem with this is I say it's a song that references Van Morrison, and as you rightly said, yet bizarrely owes much more to Bewitched.
C'est la vie.
Indeed, c'est la vie. And the worst thing about that in itself is that the actual song, the music of the song, is based on a instrumental by a band called Bioga, I think is their pronunciation, and from their 2011 album, that it had been played by Foy Vance, who we've reviewed on this podcast.
Yeah.
And he liked the tune, and then they got together and they worked together, and they turned it into this song along with several other people, because there were 9 people credited for writing the song. However, if you listen to the original instrumental, it's much more Irish, and this has been watered down to its most bewitchedness.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And it's sanitised, and it's very Irish as opposed to Irish.
Irish, yeah.
And it does sum up the kind of main problem with the record, really.
What you said there, sanitised, is an interesting choice of word. I think my belief is I'm not going to knock him because the guy's obviously he's talented. He can write songs.
He seems a nice enough bloke when I see him interviewed and stuff.
Yeah, exactly, and he seems a nice enough bloke, and he's found a niche, and he's clearly a talented guy. He's written songs for 70 artists out there at the moment that are not Ed Sheeran.
Although interestingly, only 2 of the songs of the 12 on the main bit of the album are just written by him and him alone.
Yeah.
The rest of it's all kind of co-writes.
So co-writes, but he's a talented guy. He's got 3 albums in the top 10. This album was already sold by the bucket load.
Yeah, and we'll continue to.
And it'll fill Wembley Stadium 10 times over, whereas we'd struggle to fill a pub.
But let's try that.
Yes. But you're absolutely right. He's sanitised. He's kind of found a corner of the market recently vacated by X Factor winners, where it's kind of safe guitar-led pop music that a few years ago some former baker or bin man or God forbid lawyer would have appeared on X Factor and had Christmas #1 and made a killing, but would have been a very short-lived career.
Yeah.
And he's obviously he's cornered that market, and he's raking it in, and good luck to him. But it's very safe.
And I'm going to be hearing most of this record probably throughout the entire. There'll probably be a few records I end up listening to more this year, vicariously through child listening to the various singles that come off it.
It's going to
so I'm already pretty much can sing all the lyrics to Castle on the Hill, for example.
Yeah, I mean, and another artist that's sort of also getting in on the act, but probably the edgier end of the same audience is Rag and Bone Man, I think.
Yeah,
you know, but not to take away anything from Rag and Bone Man because he's doing good stuff. But this album for me was just very safe and consequently rather dull. That said, the track immediately after Galway Girl, Happier, had some rather entertaining lyrics in it.
There are some. Yes, we should actually. That's right. I should actually say that as well. There are some quite funny moments. You know, some funny moments on the song for that as well. New Man's also got some quite droll.
Yeah, very droll.
Yes, not all bad.
No.
So let's get grimy.
While we were doing that, he sold another bucket load of records.
Yeah, I know.
No.
Let's get grimy. Gang Signs and Prayers. Stormzy.
Wow.
The long-awaited debut album from.
It feels like he's been around forever.
It does. Yes, he has, really. It's just one of those things thinking, what do you mean he's only just releasing an album?
Just got an album out.
Yeah. So, was it worth the wait, Pete?
Yes. I mean, it's become a bit of a tradition on this podcast that as soon as we get a half-decent rap album, it's all right. Yes, I'll be honest with you. I'm probably more in favour of the Gang Signs than the Prayers.
Yes, there are.
Forgive me, that one.
Definitely are both in abundance.
Both are represented in abundance on this album in probably an equal measure. There's some really good stuff coming out of that scene at the moment, and I mean, we did towards the end of last year. We did Gigs, Landlord. I actually think Gigs Landlords is a darker, edgier record than this. That's not to say I don't like this record, because actually I do. For me, it's just it's just honest. It's fresh. It's touches on all the things it goes in all the places you expected a grime record to go.
It does, yes.
But it kind of takes you with them. I say them because there's so many collaborators on this.
Yes, it's not just him alone.
Yeah, exactly. But he takes you with him on this journey. And then there's just that conflict running through it between the dark side and the light, the anger and the desire for peace. Really good.
Yeah, I think it's it's an interesting record. I mean, it's as you say, it is an album that does its kind of gangster bit, and then its goddy bit, and it's hey, let's smoke some weed bit. But then, surprisingly, also the hey, I've suffered from depression bit.
Yes, yeah, indeed.
Just not the kind of thing you expect to find in
not on this sort of
this kind of
not on this record at all. But there it is.
So I quite like the mix and the kind of attempt of doing not just one album of something that's just on one level.
Yeah,
it doesn't always work. Although bizarrely, there's the song "Blinded by Grace" Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 of which is quite dreadful. Part 2 of which is actually quite good.
Yeah,
when it gets really gospely.
Yeah.
Part 1, too much of him actually trying to sing, and I think he'd be probably the first to admit that it's not good. There's probably a good reason why he's a rapper, not a singer. He hasn't got the best kind of singing voice.
You ain't no rag and bone man, Stormzy.
No. But things like Big for Your Boots and Cold and stuff like that, and I think it's one towards the end of the song. The album I really like.
It hits a really.
Lay Me Bare, I quite like at the end.
Sorry to interrupt. It hits a really good run. I mean, first couple of open tracks, obviously, and then I think it hits a really good run. Tracks 4 through to 10. For me, it perhaps just goes on about 10 minutes too long.
Yes, it's the longest record of the podcast, but coming in at an hour. Everything else is much shorter. This particular podcast. Yeah, the interesting thing that I was reading, obviously, one of the main co-producer on the album and involved, I think, in most of the songs is Fraser T. Smith, who co-wrote Set Fire to the Rain with Adele, and also worked on Sam Smith's album. I don't think he produced it, but certainly worked with Sam Smith. But more amusingly, he was the bloke back in the day when I know it's that kind of thing, isn't it? When Craig David first came out,
Yeah.
and he'd invariably crop up on programs doing acoustic versions of stuff with a bloke sat next to him playing acoustic guitar.
Yeah. That's him.
That's Fraser T. Smith.
That's Fraser T.
Man
Smith.
with acoustic guitar who was always there doing the...
So, that's interesting. So there's a good pedigree behind this. I think this is why it wins over recent albums that we've reviewed, like Gigs and others, is that there's a stronger production value.
Yeah, although
steering this.
It also made me wonder when a new Dizzy Rascal album would come out as well. Then I was thinking, nice to have Dizzy back. As well.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I liked it. Liked it a lot.
Moving on.
More so than I thought.
We're on to the 6th studio album from Laura Marling, Sempa, Fermina. This is definitely a record for me where it was the third listen that changed it all for me.
Right.
First couple of listens, I was like, yeah, it's all right, quite with it. But I wasn't really sold on it. But by the end of the third listen, I was already into the fourth listen, and I have to say I just love this record now. Really love it. To be fair, I've been a fan of Marling's from day one.
You have. To be fair, you have.
Yeah. And it's been interesting to see a growth as an artist over that period. So whilst not losing the kind of, she managed to develop without losing the kind of simple songwriting magic that I thought she had from day one. This is a much gentler album, though, it has to be said, than the previous album, 2015's Short Movie, which we reviewed, which definitely had more of a alt rock, electric guitar kind of vibe going on in it. And did wonder at that time whether that was the direction she was going off in, but clearly not, because this reins it back in. It's apart from, I think, the final track, there's not really any electric guitar going on in this album. It's very much a acoustic thing with some strings and stuff. I think the opening track, Soothing, is one of my favourite songs of the year so far. It has that kind of lovely kind of dual jazzy bass line thing going on, which reminded me of the Unthanks album that came out last year that also did a very good job of blending folk and jazz aspects wonderfully. And it kind of goes from there into a kind of multi-tracked vocal thing that was reminding me of kind of Nick Drake, Joni Mitchell kind of thing, The Valley. And after that, it's a mixture of folk-tinged pop. I mean, Wildfire,
which I liked.
has that kind of almost kind of Lou Reedy kind of thing going on, which is quite interesting. Or Lou Reed as it would be channeled by Shelby Lynne, perhaps. And yeah, it's an album. Like I said, the first couple of listens I wasn't getting it. Third listen, suddenly it all kind of fell into place. And this is the album over the last couple of days I've had to stop myself listening to again, so I could listen to the other albums enough to express a view. That's all I have to say.
I agree with most, if all of that. Don't Pass Me By was another track that I really liked. And Wild Once, I think you just mentioned there is. Yeah. Wild Once, she actually did sound, that sort of veneer of cool slipped slightly during that track. I don't know if you noticed. Even her accent seemed to slip as well a little bit, which I thought was quite amusing.
Although I thought this was slightly less. I thought the last album did more slipping between that kind of West Coast and as in West Coast of England and versus West Coast of America.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a very it's a solid album. No, but it's an enjoyable album as well. And I agree with everything you said. it's an easy going rather than an easy listening record, and it's very contemplative musically. And again, as you said, it's not until the last track when it all sort of comes out, and it comes out very loud again, all of a sudden shakes you up and wakes you up before the end of the album. I've got nothing more to add to that. It's a good record if you're a fan.
Yes. So kind of sticking sort of with that kind of move on to the fifth solo album from Alison Krauss, her first in 18 years. Which seems odd, really, when you think of how ubiquitous in a way Alison Krauss is in country music. But I suppose it's because you kind of forget that most of her output is with her band Union Station as opposed to as a solo artist. And this is like a collection of tunes that have mainly been made famous by other people over the years. So people like Brenda Lee, Willie Nelson, Glenn Campbell, Eddie Arnold, and so forth. It's a very short record.
Yes.
34 minutes. Are there any pleasures to be had in it, Peter?
Yeah, again, I perhaps didn't enjoy this one as much as I thought I might, as we've been on the country tip now for quite some time.
Which is true.
So I think it lacked the strength of some of the albums we've reviewed in the last 12 months that are definitely country. That said, it's quite a nice record to have on. It only dawned on me, I know it dawned on you quite late in the day, it dawned on me that most of these songs actually felt like covers as well. And again, it was kind of a mild kind of country, sort of gently
yes,
musically, if you see what I'm saying. There was nothing really, again, that stood out for me. Probably I need to give it another listen. But at the same time, nothing really stood out as bad about this album.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same. It's interesting. I mean, I knew, I said I recognised some of the songs on first listen because I knew them from childhood, bizarrely some of them.
Mm.
So the opening track, "Losing You," I recognised because Brenda Lee was played quite a bit in our household growing up, and similarly, "Gentle on My Mind." I grew up with both the Glenn Campbell version of that and Dean Martin's version of that, which is the superior version in my humble opinion. And bizarrely, because of that, that her version of that particular song didn't really work for me at all. What the version of "Losing You," however, did, and I think actually the first couple of tracks on the album are where the album's the strongest. So that "Losing You" is the opening track. And then the follow-up track to that, which is a cover of, bizarrely, given that Alison Krauss often plays kind of bluegrassy type stuff, from an album called The Essential Bluegrass Album by the Osborne Brothers and Mac Wiseman. It's "Goodbye and So Long to You," which is, I loved, because again, this is what the track is. It kind of starts off in a kind of slightly country thing, but then you've got the whole kind of jazz thing coming in. You've got kind of trumpet and thing going on, and I thought it was actually a surprising arrangement of a song by somebody who actually would be more inclined naturally to record the original version of it as it was sounding, rather than the version that she does here. So I quite like that. So as you say, it's not a great record by any means, but it's a solid collection. As you say, if you've got it on, you're not going to be able to dash to kind of turn it off. It rattles through quite quickly.
Yeah.
So finally, we come to 16th solo album from Ryan Adams. This is the DI4CE album. Interestingly, because a couple of years ago we reviewed his self-titled album, which came out just as he was splitting up with Mandy Moore, his then wife, who incidentally stopped recording music, but if you check out her albums that came out in the 2000s, Coverage, Wild Hope and Amanda Lee, all really good records. Just an aside. And she also covered Todd.
Ping.
Then again, so did Alison Krauss.
Ping.
Yeah, we both were big fans of the previous Mr. Adams record.
Easily, I am.
Yeah, and it was a very strong set of commercial alt rock tunes, and I think this record pretty much continues on from where that record left off. Pretty much, the tone of the record lyrically has obviously changed because most of the songs certainly do deal with breakup and love gone wrong and stuff like that. But in a fairly even-handed way, I kind of thought lyrically. It didn't seem to be a kind of playing a blame game type thing. It seems to be, I did things wrong, you did things wrong, couldn't find a way to work it out kind of things. And I think this is a really, really strong record. It comes in at 40 minutes, rattles through. Hints of, as you might expect, with hints of Bruce Springsteen in there occasionally. Hints of the Smiths, who was a big fan of, particularly on the title track "Prisoner," had that kind of, particularly musically, it's the kind of thing you could have imagined the Smiths doing, if not vocally. Lyrically, on things like "Shiver and Shake," it's quite one of the more moving lyrics on the record, and yeah, I think it's just a record again that gets better on each listen. I'm not sure if it's better than the previous one yet, but it's certainly up there, I think.
Yeah, great. This is a very strong record, very strong. And of the selection here, probably the one I enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
He's on a roll, and with the previous album, the eponymously titled Ryan Adams, and not forgetting, of course, the awesome cover album.
Indeed, yes. There was two Ryan Adams albums a couple of years ago, wasn't there? Yeah.
Taylor Swift's what's the name of the record? Oh God, it escapes me. You know, the last album by Taylor Swift that was huge. This is he's certainly musically on a roll, and you're absolutely right. If this is the Divorce album, okay, yes, you would know because there's lots of songs about heartache and breakup on here. But yeah, you wouldn't know because it's not a bile-filled record or a settling the score record, which you might have expected even from him one time maybe. This is a very musically balanced, lyrically balanced album with, I think, some of his strongest work on.
Yeah.
And I think fans, Ryan obviously love it. I think that actually this could be an album that opens him up to new fans as well. Which, when you think of where he is in his career, 16 solo albums down the road, that's pretty impressive.
Well, it is, because it means he's already surpassed the
Depeche Mode.
The Lazy Bastards of Depeche Mode. They've only released 14.
They've only managed 14 in 30 odd years.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome turnaround. But to be turning out records of this quality, it's really, really cool. Really enjoyed this record.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's my album of the podcast.
It's my album of the podcast too. Stormzy comes in not far behind.
Laura Marling just behind for me, as it were. And Depeche Mode could do better.
But we'll see.
May creep up as the year goes on.
May creep up as the year goes on.
Right, that's it. Time to go and strangle a child.
Oh, don't do that.
Somebody else's. No, I'm kidding. My child is now quiet and well behaved, like all children are.
The only thing we'll be strangling is a couple of craft beers.
Yes.
No. Good night.